I've been having a lot of conversations recently with different people in different stages of life, and there is a common theme that is coming around, and it's when the overwhelmingness of I don't know, I don't even know if overwhelmingness is a word, but the feeling of overwhelm gets so strong in certain seasons of life that when you're trying to implement a schedule or a routine or some organization in your life and you're not able to do it, you almost feel like a failure. And that is what I want to talk about today. I want to go over three things to remember when you are struggling with routines because you are not alone. You are not a failure. And I want to kind of bring these things to light so that we can kind of highlight three things to remember so that if you are in this season of life or you get to this season of life at some point, that you can come back to this episode and it can give you some encouragement and hope.
Are you ready to stop the chaos, the stress, the overwhelm that's filling your life? I'm Renee Matt, and together you and I are going to build simple routines that are going to change your life. When you put these habits into practice, you're going to be able to organize your life in a way where you can be there for your family, pay off your debt, save money, your house can stay organized, you don't have to stress about what's for dinner, and you still get time for yourself. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the Routine Advantage Podcast.
I think this is a really, really hard thing to broach with certain people because it almost feels like something you don't want to talk about because if you do have that feeling of failure, like you hear other people putting routines in place or getting organized, and you feel like you should be able to do it, but there's something that holds you back, or there's something that prevents you from being able to get organized in a way that you see others getting organized or getting their routines in place. And you can feel an inadequacy that hurts really deep. And it doesn't matter what season of life you're in. Maybe you have kids in school that you just can't get control of your household even when they are at school. Maybe you have little kids, maybe it's even little babies, and you just feel absolutely overwhelmed because your time is being taken for those babies. Maybe you have high schoolers and there's just something like sports and you're being pulled in all different directions and you just can't seem to get the time to put these things in place. Everybody is at a different stage and a different season of life. And it can be extremely difficult, especially if you are surrounding yourself with somebody that does have routines. And even though it can be a source of encouragement, like this podcast was created to be a source of encouragement, to help share the things that I have found help me when I am feeling extremely overwhelmed. And I wanted to share that with others. But the stage that I'm in, I have gone through years of figuring these things out on my own, and it might seem a lot easier when you're coming in and hearing it for the first time. And if you try to do all of the things I'm talking about at one time, it might feel like this just won't work for you because it's too much, you can't do it, and it's just too overwhelming. And that's not what this is meant to do. Never want to make anyone feel that way, and it should be that source of encouragement. So these are the three things. Then, when I was thinking about this with these recent conversations, because it is happening in so many conversations lately, that I wanted to bring these three things to remember. Is number one is to find your priorities because this is going to be your guiding light in whatever you do in your home. So, you want to know what your priorities are in this season. It does not have to be the same priority for the next 5 years. It can truly be the next week. It could be the next month. It could even be the next 6 months. Whatever season of life you want to really focus your priorities on is completely up to you. You get to control this. So, some examples of this might be your priority is that you want one on one time with your kids, and you're okay with the house not being absolutely perfect. And that is your priority. So, you can make that decision so that when it comes time to focus and you feel like maybe the mopping needs to get done because you're not able to get all these other things done, maybe making the decision to sit down and play a card game with your kids is the best decision because that is what you're prioritizing at the moment, and that's okay. So you're finding your priorities. Maybe it's not, maybe you don't even have kids, but maybe your priority is to make sure that you have time with your family and not just being on your phone or, watching Netflix every night. Maybe that priority then is to make sure you call somebody in your family twice a week and you set time aside for a phone conversation. Maybe it is prioritizing your health and instead of going out and hanging out with friends um or doing other things. I can't think of anything right off the bat. My brain is not functioning very well right now. But maybe instead of choosing other things, because you're prioritizing your health, you're going to set aside an hour to prep all your vegetables for the week because that is something that's really important to you right now in this season of life. You have to find your priorities so that it can be that guiding post so that when other things come up, you don't feel as much guilt, hopefully no guilt, but at least not as much guilt when you're choosing the things you're prioritizing rather than feeling like you're being pulled in other directions. So, number two, the second thing to remember is to start with just one routine at a time or one thing at a time. Don't try and do it all. Now, when I talk about the five foundational routines, in my workbook, I purposely go through five routines over the course of 8 weeks. This gives you time to really focus on just one thing at a time rather than trying to get all five of them in place right away because it's not practical, it's not realistic, and it's really hard to try and get everything into place at once. So I purposely spread it out and you can adjust it to what works for you. Maybe you're somebody that you can get all five routines in place and that works well and you can be consistent with that and it works great. And that's awesome. But if you're not that in that season, then it is okay taking time to get one routine in place. So maybe that is just I need to prep my vegetables each week, and that's my one routine I need to do consistently for a while. Maybe it is doing your morning routine and prioritizing time to sit down with your journal in the morning or sit down and do a Bible study. Maybe it is prioritizing just like a nightly walk after dinner and you want time with your family. Maybe it's prioritizing a family game night. Like you can have so many different things, and that is the priority, but it's also the routine that you want to start doing consistently. So I kind of blended the number one and number two together there, but putting those routines in place is really important and it does tie into your priorities. So if you have your priorities is to get your house organized or not even necessarily organized, but to just feel like it's not like a tornado went through it all the time. Maybe that is your priority. You just want to keep it tidy enough that you feel good about the state of your home and so then your priority is making sure you take the time to do that. So then your first routine should probably be getting something like the daily 7 home routine in place. And if that's too overwhelming that you don't have time for a 20 to 30-minute routine, then try something else. Maybe it's as simple as you just prioritize making the beds every day. And that is going to help get you consistent with one routine so that you can eventually add something else to that so that you can build upon each routine but start with one thing at a time because we don't want to try and do it all because in itself is overwhelming and it will just burn us out and then we're going to crash and we're not going to be able to maintain that consistency and we are going to feel like a failure and that is huge when it comes to this like lifestyle of trying to get things in place is we can't do it all. So we need to stop trying to do it all. And the third thing I want you to remember is to not compare yourself to others. And this one can be so hard, especially when we are having these conversations with others. People are sharing other things with us that they're doing. We can feel really good about the routine that we're doing. And then when we hear about somebody else, we start to kind of compare and see, like, oh, well, I thought I was doing well, but maybe I'm not. But that is just only going to hinder it, or like hinder our progress and hold us back. And it's very negative to look at ourselves that way. Like, we want to have a positive outlook on what we're doing. And when you can find your priorities first, and then you can start with the one routine that's going to align with those priorities. It makes it a lot easier to not compare ourselves to others, because if you know what your priority is and you know what one routine you're putting in place first, then when others are talking about their routines or what they have in place or the success they're having, you can sit back and you can be happy for them, and you can be proud of what they're doing and be very joyous about that, while also being totally okay that your life doesn't look the same right now. It doesn't mean it won't ever look similar to that or have the organization in your life, but that is not what you're focused on right now. And you can still be proud of the progress you're making right now, because that is your priority and that is what you are starting with. And I hope that you can take this and that you get some encouragement from it, because with these conversations with so many people lately, it is really hard to see that, where people do feel like they're being really hard on themselves because they don't feel like they're um, living up to the expectation of what others are doing. And I'm that makes me really sad, and I just really want you to feel encouraged, and I'm hoping that this podcast is uh that encouragement for you. It gives you some structure to be able to get those routines in place and to be able to make those small shifts in a way that makes you feel really, really good about what you're doing. But I just want you to know that you do not have to do it all, and you shouldn't have to do it all. And I'm hoping that my episodes on this podcast are a way for you to find what you need first, get that into place, and then move on to the next thing. And this is what is going to help build that consistency over time, where we don't just give up on the routines right away because it works for a while and then it just gets to be too much. We don't want it to get to be too much. We actually want to put these routines in place so that it can simplify and make our lives easier, not harder. If your routines are making life harder, then it's probably the wrong routine for you, or you're trying to do too many routines at once. And I just want you to know that. And I want you to be very proud of any steps that you're taking right now. And I hope that you can remember these three things and maybe do a little journaling session to kind of walk through your thoughts and see what your life looks like right now, so that you can really focus on these three things to guide you and really make those decisions on where you do want to be putting your time and focus and energy right now in your life, because we don't want to be comparing it to others. We want to make sure we're doing what's best for us and our families. So, the quick recap of those three things to remember, especially if you're struggling with routines, is number one, to find your priorities. And number two is to start with just one routine first. Don't try and do it all. And number three, don't compare yourself to others. So I hope that this was helpful for you. And if you needed to hear this, I hope it touched your heart. If you have any questions, or you do want to mention anything about these episodes, about this one, or any of the episodes on this podcast, I would love to hear from you. You could either reach out in our Facebook community, or you can send us an email. All of those links are in the show notes to reach out to us, to contact us if you need to get the workbook and start walking through just one routine at a time. Then that is there for you. You can also do the Audit Your Habits guide, which is a free printable guide to kind of walk through these 5 different areas. Maybe that will help you to really determine which routine you want to focus on first. And maybe it's not even any of those five foundational ones. Maybe it is something that is just really specific to your life right now. And it's something just simple and small, but you really want to be consistent with it because it's a priority of yours. That is a great place to start. And I hope that you really feel empowered to to do that and to do what's best for you. So I hope this was helpful, and I will see you back here on Thursday for our next episode of the podcast.
Did you love that episode or learn something useful? If so, would you do me a huge favor? My goal is to grow this podcast and help as many women as I can break free from the overwhelm so they can truly enjoy their life. The best way for me to do this is for you to leave a 5-star written review on your podcast app and to share this episode with a friend or in your Instagram stories. I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care.